Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Okay, so today we're going to be doing something a little special because today I actually have with me a candidate for Senator of Tennessee. His name is John Wolfe Jr. I'd tell you more about him, but he's going to get into that in the interview. So, here you go. So, first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm a lawyer in Tennessee. I've been licensed to practice. I passed the bar exam in '83, so that's 35 years ago. I'm licensed only in Tennessee, and of course I can do federal court work as well. I've been interested in community affairs for a real long time. I was actually published in two national magazines. My comments were, while I was in college, actually. I've worked on various civic causes. I do civil rights cases. I do employment cases. I work with ordinary people. I try to stand up to the official abuse of power. The reason for running this year is because the people of Tennessee need to look very closely at a progressive agenda, and that's what I have. And that includes single-payer health care, within the Medicare framework. It includes a higher minimum wage. My opponent is against those things. Bill Breslin's a billionaire. He made a lot of money while he was in office. He enriched himself, and he doesn't care one whit about the people. When he was in office, he cut labor rights, he cut Medicare rights, Medicaid rights, federal Medicare aid. Cost the Tennesseans about 200 to 300 deaths a year. And then the next year, when these people are dying because of his health care cuts, he turns around and gives $200 billion in tax credits to some of his closest associates through this scam called 10 Invesco, which is still under investigation by the state comptroller general. And this guy doesn't care one whit about people. He's got a bad record. In fact, his last term as governor, what he did is he started a company called Silicon Ranch Corporation, and this is all documented in the Secretary of State. He became chairman of the board in, I guess it was 2010 in August, and then at that time he also employed two people who were in his cabinet. One was supposed to be economic director, the other one revenue director, and their names were Reagan Farr, and their name was Matt Kisper, and they together started Silicon Ranch while they were in the governor's office. And then later on, the company became worth, I guess, close to $2 or $3 billion. And in fact, I think that Shell bought, if you look at the corporate news, you'll see that Shell bought a $2.47 billion investment in the company, I think, to give them 47% ownership, which means it's probably worth about $5 billion right now. He capitalized on opportunities that he got in the governor's office to make his money. And we're going to have a big story about that, probably around the 4th of July. We're ironing out the details. But my agenda basically is a higher minimum wage. It's single payer. It's also a cap on interest rates. Consumer loans and things like that are killing people. We need to have a cap like they do in Germany of 20%, so people can actually buy stuff and not everything be monetized for banks and lending companies and things like that. That would help the economy. It would increase consumer demand and help the economy outside the financial sector quite a bit. The other thing we need is a transparent internet. We need to have net neutrality. We don't need to have the companies and the corporations and governments working together to try to control the flow of information. That should be free. That should be fair. It should be accessible to everybody. That's a libertarian idea. That's a freedom idea. Free information is crucial to democratic decision-making in the United States so people can freely choose what they want to support, what candidates are better for them, and things like that. And any kind of government censorship like that has got to be thrown out the window. Unfortunately, the way the Federal Communications Commission is set up now, that's not going to be possible. But that is something we need to work for, and we need to continue to lobby for as public servants. I think that's extremely important. And there's, of course, other ideas and things like that I work for, and But those are the main things, I think, healthcare. The other thing we need to do, too, is we need to make sure we have $1.4 trillion right now in student loan debt, which means basically you got 25 million kids out there between about 22 and 32 that are basically indentured servants to the banks. You know, their debts are going to run till they're 50 years old. That means you're going to have people hamstrung, a huge class of people, close to 1/3 or 1/10 of the population. They're going to be hamstrung economically. They're not going to be able to buy cars at a decent interest rate. They're not going to be able to buy homes at a decent interest rate. They're basically indentured servants to the banks. It's like a neo-feudalism sort of arrangement. The federal government needs to step in and forgive or monetize half of that debt. $700 billion needs to be wiped out, and therefore, you know, that would go a long way to free up consumption and get these people back on their economic feet, the ones that are having a hard time paying it back and can't afford to, basically without compromising their life. You know, you had that'd be like adding or empowering or invigorating about 30 million new consumers, and that would have a hugely beneficial effect on the economy. It creates more demand for products outside of the financial industry and things like that. Yeah, that's what we need to do, is grow those other industries, and then the financial industry can grow along with it instead of growing the financial industry and then hamstringing everybody else. The other thing we can also accomplish this by cutting the defense budget, you know, by 15%, 10 to 15%, using the money to offset what we lose in the student loans. We could also employ a Wall Street tax, a transaction tax of 1/1000, which is just $1 on 1,000 split between a buyer and a seller. That's only $5 for every 10,000 transacted. We could do that and raise probably about $120 to $130 billion a year, which again would go toward college education, where people could go to state schools and the government would pay half the price of it. You do all that kind of stuff, you build the economy from the bottom up. You give people what they need to stay abreast, which is health care. You give them education, which is what they need to get ahead. And you do that, and you'll have a progressive economy. You'll still have capitalism. People will still make money on it, but you'll have a better middle class. Right now, 60% of the people in this country don't have $1,000 in savings. Right now, in this country, 10% of the people own 90% of financial wealth. The gap between rich and poor has widened tremendously since 1978, when we began our experiment in neoliberalism, and it's just getting worse and worse. We've got to have a progressive government of some kind to reverse this trend. Right now, the government is owned by Wall Street. Wall Street acts suppressed. Businesses they always act like they're the victim, but they control Washington. They spend $100 billion a year or more lobbying, and they've got a lock on the law, they've got a lock on policy, and they've got a lock on the politicians. And somebody has got to try to break that. And I gave you all this stuff without any notes. Everything is just spontaneous. I know what I'm talking about. And if enough people join us, we can run these plutocrats right out the door.
Okay, and who are some of your major political influences? Like, who was the politicians that made you want to run?
Well, it came from me. You know, I mean, I'm not a young guy. You know, I'm 64 years old. You know, I can still do a lot of things. You know, lift hundreds of pounds and all that sort of stuff. It's a big deal. You know, I look at different ones. I'm sort of eclectic. You know, Bernie Sanders has some good things to say. On the other hand, Bernie's afraid to take on the Pentagon. Bernie's afraid to take on AIPAC. Bernie's afraid to take on the Saudi Arabian people. You know, they were bombing Yemen. Well, he started to do that a little bit, to give him credit. But he's afraid to stand up to Netanyahu. He's all for the boondoggles in the Defense Department. The F-35, $1 trillion. We could have sent kids to school for 20 years just on that one fighter jet that we've spent $1 trillion on. Now, that's just the way it is. And, you know, Bernie has some pretty good ideas. You know, but he's not my idol or anything. It's good that he did get the support that he did. Sometimes you look to people like Martin Luther King who are outside of government. They're inspiring figures, you know, people that lead dissent and is justified. And, you know, try to raise people's awareness, try to raise people's stature, try to raise people's self-esteem, try to make people feel better, empowered about themselves and what their
You've made multiple runs for political office since 1998. Can you tell us a little bit about how running a campaign is from the candidate's point of view?
Well, you have to work a full-time job, and you have the kind of viewpoints that don't raise a lot of money. People, businesses and people who have money aren't going to sit there and throw money at somebody that's a progressive. I have to work 40 hours a week. I've got clients to represent. In '98, I remember the first election. It was a primary. I was an unknown and I almost won it. I remember that very well. But it didn't happen. But, I was 44 years old. I didn't ask people for any money. What money I used was my own. And that's the way it's been ever since. So I don't have any problems with it. I've won 3 primaries, and I've been running in a red district, and I've been consistent on my views. And there's, you wouldn't say that a Republican was a bad politician, or you wouldn't discredit his views just because he went to San Francisco and lost 4 or 5 times. That's what's going to happen. And it's the same equivalent here. Democrats don't make root here. And it'd be kind of like taking the best cactus seed that you have and going up to the Alaska tundra, maybe in midsummer, stick that thing in the ground, make it as warm as you can, but guess what? It ain't going to sprout. So, it's hard to do stuff on soil that doesn't really it's hard to grow stuff on soil that's not indigenous to your thoughts.
Your first campaign to gain notoriety was your run in 2012. What inspired you to run in that election?
Well, President Obama had some good ideas. I think he personally is magnificent. I mean, he achieved a lot from very little. He took care of his career, but then when he got into office, he didn't take care of the people. The bankers owned him, the military owned him, expanded the war in Afghanistan. He bailed out the banks without getting anything in return. He didn't prosecute any war criminals in this country. He didn't prosecute any bank criminals in this country. He gave them a free pass and basically encouraged them to continue to do the same thing. So now we've got an expanded war in Syria. He also attacked Libya, which was not a threat to the United States. It was totally a wrong-headed attack. Also, he had Obamacare, which, I did criticize at the time because of the fact that it wasn't single-payer. Obamacare basically forced people to deal with monopolies. Insurance companies are legally protected monopolies under the 1947 Landrum-Griffin Act. And I'm not, but it was certainly an improvement over the current system. But on the other hand, it was because, it was so corporate friendly. Why, in 7 years, that stock had quintupled. And all the other healthcare stocks had gone up by tremendous percentages, between 250 and 300, 500%. And that was my problem with Obama. Basically, he didn't. His stimulus package was a little bit weak, I thought, as well. We could have done a whole lot more, I think, as far as rebuilding infrastructure and stuff like that. Of course, after his first 2 years, they had a Republican majority, so there's really not much of a way that he could have done anything, unless he had just taken his case to the people and tried to force some of the Republicans out. But he didn't want to do that. He's sort of a compromising person and by nature, and kind of mild-mannered actually when it comes to public disputes and things like that. But that's what basically the warmongering, the expanded wars, the attack on Libya, that was a big one, and then the failure to prosecute any war criminals. And we had people here that are still getting promoted in the FBI that actually oversaw the torture of an American, Jose Padilla, after 9/11. He was tortured so much that he was basically incompetent to stand trial because they thought that he had tried to plant a dirty bomb. And, of course, that turned out not to be true, so they got him on another charge. It was less dastardly than that one, much less. And I think he's spending time in jail now. But they actually tortured an American citizen, and he wasn't the only one. And those people are still free today after doing that. And that's totally unconstitutional. That kind of thing needs to be stopped. The scare from 9/11 needs to subside a little bit. We can still be vigilant and be just as vigilant about our rights and protecting people's liberties without sacrificing our security. And we need to start doing that. That was my other beef with Obama. I think, I don't remember, everything that I was upset about, but mainly was war in Wall Street. And also, Obama gave the bankers like free reign. I mean, everybody that he had in the White House, like Jacob Lew, bailed Citibank, bailed out corrupt, helped cause the economic crisis. Well, where does he end up? In jail? No. Where does he end up? In the Obama White House. The same is true about Jeffrey Immelt. GE, the financial sector of GE, okay, it collapsed, billions of dollars lost. What happened? He's incompetent. Well, he ends up in the White House too. The same with Bob Wolfe of UBS. The same with Lloyd Blankfein. He had Obama's ear too. And so did the people from JP Morgan. And what did they do? A lot of them bet against the housing market. They bet against America. They knew it was going to fall. They made secret bets. That means they bought puts against the whole housing market, made billions of dollars, betting against people. Even when they were recommending them to people, the security packages to people to buy, they were betting against what they were trying to sell. People like that, one word, jail. And they didn't get it. Now, Obama himself said, the only thing standing between me and you, when he was in the room with the bankers, he said, I'm the only thing that stands between you and the pitchforks. And so he gave them tacit pardons, and then the money began to flow in the Democratic National Committee and into Obama's re-election campaign. I mean, it was a tacit agreement. Nobody's going to go to jail for it. Things like that are understood. Body language talks. Indirect words like that talk. There's a reason they're dead. And they were relieved. When they walked out of there, they couldn't believe it. They've had harsher criticisms in the Catholic confessional box than what Obama gave them for collapsing the entire Western economy.
Did you intend to win the nomination, or was this more of a progressive protest vote?
Well, I wanted to go ahead and get out there and see what happened to see if I could generate some support. And of course, you're talking about the entire United States, and you're talking about one person. So I went out there. First thing, it didn't go well. I didn't even make my way in New Hampshire. Probably got about 254 votes or something like that. Did a little bit better in Missouri. Topped 1,000. This is me running on my own, no money. Then went down south to Louisiana. Did a little bit down there, and then ended up getting like 18,000 votes. And was supposed to get 4 or 5 delegates, but they disqualified me on a technicality. Then went over to Arkansas and got 42% of the vote. I mean, and so that was the high point. And so that's what happened. And I was supposed to get like 8 or 9 delegates out of that. I carried 30 counties in Arkansas. Obama carried 36.
Slight correction, you were supposed to get 19 delegates in Arkansas.
I was?
You were, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
The media was even kind of scared. They're like, oh, he might actually win Arkansas.
Yeah, well, they did get scared, and that's why they announced beforehand that I wasn't going to get any delegates. They tried to take the air out of the balloon, about 2 weeks before the election. I think it was about May the 7th or 8th or something, they came out with the statement that no matter what happens, we're not going to give Wolfe any delegates. They did that even before the vote. And, of course, that was to preempt the challenger. That's just the way the Democratic Party is. They don't like outsiders. Bernie Sanders, they rigged it against him. And then they elected somebody who was a Wall Street and Pentagon queen, Hillary Clinton. I mean, she's loved every war, loved every banker. And what these people like that blur the distinctions between what Democrats and Republicans are supposed to be. And that's the same thing about my current opponent, Phil Bredesen. He's backing Trump on Iran. He's backed Trump on Korea, which isn't a bad thing. But he's basically going around and he's for austerity. He doesn't believe in a higher minimum wage. He doesn't fight at all. He says that's a pipe dream for anybody to have single payer health insurance. He's done things like basically during a recession, he spent $10 million giving favored contractors the right to build the governor's mansion. That was a terrible thing, but he went ahead and did it. Then, of course, I've already outlined to you what he did as far as the Silicon Ranch affair. Joining up, forming a corporation while he was governor, hiring 2 cabinet members, and then going out and trying to seek business opportunities on state time so they could enrich themselves after the office, and they did that. He's now worth billions of dollars. There's no question, that Bill Bredesen is one of the most corrupt politicians to ever come out of Tennessee. He's disgraced the state of Davy Crockett and Andrew Jackson. If he was running back in the 1830s, Davy Crockett would have called him one thing. He would have called him a tick. Davy Crockett wrote a lot about politics. He said the ticks are in there. They're going to suck the system dry of all its blood, and beware. And if he had a crystal ball back in 1830 and looked at it, he would have seen Bill Bredesen right there, because he is a tick.
During the 2012 election, you were seated in a lesser-known Democratic debate with Randall Terry and Vermin Supreme during the infamous glitter bombing. Can you tell us what was going through your head when you saw Supreme walking in with the boot on his head and during the bombing itself?
Well, actually, if I'd been 30 years old, I would have probably taken him out of the arena and put him outside, because he doesn't belong in the debate. All he did was diminish the importance of what we were doing. Yeah, I don't have any. I don't like Vermin Supreme, really. I've seen him, from time to time. He doesn't have anything constructive to say. In fact, he's just belittles the process, really. We're trying to get minority opinions out, and he basically interjects himself gratuitously, and I don't like it. I think that St. Anselm's going to exclude him next time around in 2020. As far as Randall Terry, he just, I just shook my head during that debate. He talked about Obama being a socialist and Obama being that and the other. I mean, what a joke, this guy's the dean of the banking community, the savior of the banking community, the bailout king for the banking community, and this guy, Randall Terry, where does his brain come from? And why would you ever call somebody like that a socialist? Somebody that makes every move the Pentagon asks him to. More troops here for Afghanistan. Even when McChrystal leaked the document showing what the Pentagon made to force Obama's hand, did Obama go after him as a leaker? No, he didn't have the courage. He'll go after small guys like Carrico and some of these other people in jail. But McChrystal caused Obama to commit all his troops. Americans lost lives. Where's McChrystal? He's free, drawing $200,000 or $300,000 a year, and probably working for a military contractor making 10 times that. It's absolutely amazing.
Okay, so why do you believe your campaign was so popular in the South compared to not being popular in the North?
Well, that's a good question. The South's a little bit closer. I sound Southern sometimes. Plus, it was, I'd gotten my campaign a little bit more together. I had a little bit more time. And, I think that, that had a lot to do with it. Plus, I was a Tennessean next door to Arkansas. And, there was, a lot of people in Arkansas probably didn't like Obama. But I ran in the Democratic primary, not in the Republican primary. And, that's Bill Clinton's state. They have a huge organization that worked against me. They would not even let me speak in Arkansas. There's a guy named Bob Bodenhauer up in Mountain City. You can ask him. I had a real good friend that asked Bob, hey, let John Wolfe speak. No, they wouldn't do it. I went to Little Rock and tried to get the right to speak. No, they wouldn't do it. I forget the lady's name who was the party state chair, Christie, somebody. But, that's just what they do. They exclude outsiders. They treat me badly, but, that's their right. That's what politics is all about. The guy on the outside has to make his case. He's got to come in and try to run them off and run them off their base a little bit. But, it got better, and it could have been a lot better. I could campaign, actually, probably do better in the northern states, if I just had the money. I think I could do equally well. But it's just hard to do stuff when, you don't have just a cash cow to milk. And, people like Bredesen, all they got to do is just ring a bell, they know what, and all those contributors know what he's going to do for them, and they come running, and it works every time. But we shall see what happens this time around. This is an important election.
Much like other progressive candidate Darcy Richardson, you chose to continue campaign after the primary. He chose the Reform Party. You chose to campaign as an independent Democrat. Why did you choose to continue your run?
I'm not so certain that that's the right history. Well, Darcy did what now?
Darcy Richardson, one of the progressive candidates, chose to run under the Reform Party to continue his run.
Oh, well, I think at the convention, after the convention, there wasn't anything I could really do. The party had already nominated him. If I wanted to do anything, I was out of time, I believe. I don't think if I got any more votes after that, I'd be surprised. I don't know where they would have come from.
Now, you can choose not to answer this question, but I'd like to know, who did you end up supporting in the 2012 election after your candidacy went nowhere?
Well, it did go somewhere. I wouldn't say it didn't go nowhere.
Well,
of course, anytime that President Obama runs against a Republican like Mitt Romney, the thing that people will do inside the party is support Mr. Obama.
I'd like to correct something I just said. I don't mean it went nowhere. I mean, you didn't end up getting the nomination. It was a slip of the tongue.
That's true. That's true. I did not. I lost.
From what my research says, you ran for the presidency again in 2016. Is that true?
I put my name out there. There was no active campaign or anything like that. That's really about it. I didn't go anywhere or anything like that. I think I was on the ballot in a few states, but not too many. I was just too busy with work. I had, covered up with municipal lawsuits, things like that. I wish I could have done more, but I didn't. So.
Speaking of the 2016 election, who did you end up supporting?
Well, I was for Sanders. I was hoping that, since I was not making any progress, and I didn't have time, I was hoping that he would win. And, he was really, really cheated. There's just no question about that. That's all been borne out, the leaks and everything like that. That's the irony, too, of Assange, he's in trouble, and, people are blaming Russia and all that sort of thing. But the message is what's important, and that is that, the primaries were rigged. And, of course, again, going into the 2016 election, you've got two choices. And you have to, again, even though you don't like it, you have to stay with, your party. Even though you don't like, Trump is just, he's a disaster. The thing about Trump is that he just, he's just too egotistical, and he's too, what's the word? He's too erratic, and he's not empathetic, and he's basically fueling people's emotions, and while they're all mad and everything, he's carrying out the agenda of the rich. Now, to be truthful, I did say at times that, during the campaign, Hillary was, somewhat of a warmonger, and that maybe Trump could bring peace between the United States and Russia, and maybe, Trump wouldn't be so interventionist in Syria, and that maybe Trump would be kind of cautious in committing American force abroad, but none of those hopes turned out to be true. I never endorsed Trump. I just said that as sort of a sidebar comment. But he's turned out to be really aggressive, and of course, with Hillary, I think things would have been better. Even though the thing I didn't like about Hillary was that she wanted to, ground the Russian Air Force in Syria. But to me, I did criticize that quite a bit, during the campaign, because I felt like that was an invitation to World War III. Because Syria, to say what you will, is a sovereign state. It's got a right to defend itself against those insurgents. Most of those insurgents are outside of Syria. They're Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Jordan-sponsored terrorists. I talk to people over there. They get paid about about $1,800 a month in U.S. cash to go out there and try to overthrow Assad. That's a king's ransom over there in the Middle East. And they also get, a lot of other perks too, which I don't really want to mention, on an interview. But I'll be happy to tell anybody off the record. But that's not off the record now. But that's what we have, and the United States has supported it too. And Hillary's noted too that Saudi Arabia supports terrorism. That was in the WikiLeaks. And I don't support trying to overthrow a sovereign government. I think it's against the Constitution. It's against the UN Charter. We're not involved in self-defense at all. And, we need to be out of Syria. And Trump didn't do what I thought he was going to do, because Trump has expanded our troop level to about 2,500. That's what we know of. He's also given them anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft missiles for the first time. He's given them more weapons, or more sophisticated weapons, than Obama ever gave them. And, he's raised, like I said, the troop level. And he's using U.S. bombers to hit some of Assad's bases. And that's totally wrong. And I just don't believe it. I don't believe that that's the proper thing to do. And I think the war is unconstitutional. And I think if I were in Washington, that would be certainly one grounds for impeachment that I would bring up against Mr. Trump. Either you get a declaration of war or a UN charter, or you bring our boys home and don't get us involved in another conflict, and tell Israel to quit bombing Assad too. Assad's not trying to bomb Israel. They're carrying the aggression to him. And I'll say for the record too, that Israel is also treating ISIS soldiers in Syria. They take them from the battlefield when they're wounded, not just ISIS, mostly Al-Qaeda, but some ISIS soldiers. They take them to Israeli hospitals. This is documented. It's been documented in interviews. The Israeli ambassadors have admitted to it. Even though they're allies with the United States, they still treat these people, and they bring them back to the battlefield after they're healed. Now, we need to get Israel, our friend Israel, to stop doing that. And Trump has not tried to do that either. Now, that's, just, some people might say it's a minor point. Some people might not believe it. But the truth is there. All you have to do is Google it on YouTube or an internet thing, and just put, okay. Some of my voices. I'm glad that you're leaving. Someone interrupt you. Anyway, all you have to do is just Google Israel treats Assad, or Israel treats wounded Al-Qaeda. If you Google that up on YouTube or on a Google search engine, you'll find it. And so that's, a minor point possibly, but nonetheless, given that Israel's our ally, we need to get them to stop doing that.
Are there any candidates that you're currently endorsing for 2018 races, or even the presidential race in 2020?
I'm not even thinking about that right now. I'm interested in what happens next August the 2nd, when Tennessee has to vote as to Mr. Bredesen and myself.
Okay, one more thing before we go. If your run for Senate does not succeed, are there any other plans for you to run for public office?
I don't really have any plans right now. I'm just trying to worry about this. I've got law practice. I've got a lot of other things I want to do. I'm 64 years old, and I'd like to do some other stuff. But I like running for office because to me it's educational. I learn and people learn. They hear from a voice that's not paid for, a voice that's never been bought, a fairly educated voice, somebody that's had a lot of experience and doing a lot of different things. And they get a new perspective, and, I learn about them and learn about what they need. And, I think that, I think this country has so much potential. All we have to do is just change a few things to make it work. I mean, right now, people don't even know. People in America are blinded to how other countries operate. Like, for instance, they don't know that America has the lowest minimum wage in the West, $7.25, except for two other countries, if you want to consider them Western, Mexico and Turkey. Everybody else has a much higher minimum wage. They don't know that America, except for Mexico and Turkey, has the highest child poverty rate among all the advanced Western countries. And there's a relationship between low wages and a high child poverty rate. And also the fact that people still die of health care. This is the only country, advanced Western country, where people die or go bankrupt on account of lack of access to affordable health care. It's the only Western country where this happens. If you get 25,000 people dying in Germany every year like you do here for lack of access to affordable health care, you'd have riots in the street. But here people accept it. It's amazing what Americans accept. You know, they've been dumbed down by a stupid media, you know, that doesn't really treat things properly. 60% of Americans, like I said, don't even have $1,000 in savings. And all you have to do to get prosperity going again, really, is to just put a small tax on Wall Street, cut the Pentagon spending, and then put a gross receipts tax on some of the big brokerage houses, and you'll have enough money to make everybody at least live decently, you know, where they won't have to worry about dying from lack of health care, where they won't have to worry about their electricity being turned off, where they don't have to worry that they only have $1,000 in savings. All we have to do is make a few adjustments, but we can't do it because the log jams up there because Wall Street owns Washington and nothing can get done. And they've redistricted, they've cut out voters, they've done a lot of things to consolidate their power because they know their time's running out. Because the people are finally, at some point, going to get tired of them. So they're trying to extend their stay for as long as they can, but I'm here to try to accelerate the end of it.
Thank you for doing the interview. Is there anything you want to say to my audience before I let you go?
Beat that. You know, you come on, talk to you, and you let him give answers like this. He doesn't know half what I know. He's never experienced anything. You know, I've lived life from the bottom up to almost the top, and then down and back up again. You know, I meet Preston anytime, anywhere. You know, tell him we need to have a debate so that people can make a choice. He needs to quit hobnobbing with the plutocrats and get down here where everybody else is.
Thanks for being here for the interview, John Wolfe Jr. I'll link to your campaign accounts in the description of the video that I'm gonna post this on. Thanks for doing the interview.